Hi and welcome back to a new episode of Python and Pandas. Today's episode is about filtering information with Pandas. For that, we're going to create a small data set that we're going to try to use different methods for filtering, not only filtering observation, but columns or multiple columns. Which conditions can we apply? Which functions can we use for filtering? Using iloc and loc for filtering information, filtering data, filtering columns too. That's all we're going to talk about today. Let's see with Python and more. Okay, we're talking about filtering information. For that, we're going to create a small data set where we're going to try to discover many things using Pandas. Pandas is the library for excellence in data manipulation. Let's see. I'm going to create this small data set, NDF, and you can see we have different information. We have index, remember, columns or features or variables, how you want to call them, and we have cells or observations. So you can see here I have an observation. When I say observation, I'm talking about one row. When I say a value is one single cell. It's important to not have that common terminology. Let's see. Example, what about filtering columns? This is a way different programming languages are, for example, can filter or select columns. You can see the comma is used for separating in an array the rows and the columns. However, let's see if in Python's DataFrames this works. Let's see. You can see it's an invalid syntax. I cannot select the row or the column 1. Remember that I'm going to start saying column 1, column 2, or 0, because Python will start with index 0, right? That works for columns or for rows. Observation. Okay, so it doesn't work. Okay, maybe it's by name. It's not column 1. Maybe it's by name. As you can see here, I'm going to use marks, the third column, and separating commas for the observations too. And I say, no. No. You cannot separate information by that. Okay. What about selecting column 1 and without using the comma? No. What about only by the name? Well, this is a way for calling one in a data frame. We call that column by its name, not talking about any observation in particular. And you use the brackets, bookmarks, and okay, this is it. All this information is about my data in marks, the column marks. The same is when we use dot. You say student df dot marks. Okay, it works too. So we have two different ways to call one column. However, the problem here is we're not selecting a specific value or specific values from this column. We're just selecting one column, however, no observation in particular. And what about multiple columns too? Well, as you can see, we have to list my information. If that works for one column, so we have to list my information. As you can see, we come here and, the bracket to select everything. And we have the list of our columns. And then I run, yes. So this is the way for selecting multiple columns. As you can see. Okay, now let's see with iloc, loc. Remember the difference between loc and iloc? If you don't remember, I'm going to leave you the description, the link for the video where we're talking about this. As you can see, commas. We had problems with comma, right? Okay, but with the iloc, it's not going to be any problem. Let's see, the I is for index, so we talk about numbers only, numbers, not the name of the column. You can see, for example, I'm going to print again my data frame, so we're going to see it. Or if you prefer to see it here, of course, it's going to be here. As you can see, this is the column 0, 1, 2, and 3. As you can see, we're going to compare now the information here. I'm going to run this part. I'm saying column 1 and the points there that talking about all the observations. All the observations. Let's see which one it select. Okay, it select. You can see. We're going to compare age. It select age. So you can see why, because the column 0 with index 0 is name. let's see. There you go. So you can see are all the names for my observations. And so what about if I use this for working with different columns, right? Different columns with some particular, for example, here, history. There is a trick on this. The trick is because we're talking about iloc that is linked to index, it doesn't include the third column that I'm writing just right here. So that means I'm going to select the column 1, the column 2, however, the index in column 3, no. All the observations, okay, we saw that this columns works. However, I'm going to try to say, okay, 1 to 7. Okay, but that means it's going to be observation 1 in the index 1, remember? And to 7, but at 7 it's not going to be included. So I'm going to talk about all these subsets of information right here. And we're going to run this. And there you go. We have H marks because it's 1 and 2 include 1 to 6 in the observations, the index, right? That's the thing with iloc. We need to be careful about what is included and not, and we talk about that digits information, not about labels, like for example names. And this is the difference with loc. You can see now, I'm gonna say the labels of my columns, that's the names, and the column here, the 2 points together, and then we say the observations. And you can say marked and height. I'm not saying any particular number because we are with loc, so we call it by its name. And as you can see here, the difference between iloc and loc, the observation with index 3 will be included. There you go. So we're filtering information using iloc by column's name. As you can see, that's the difference how we are going to filtering and select the information. You can see here what it could happen. It didn't work in the past with commas for separating columns and observation. But let's see. So it doesn't work. You can see, no, it doesn't matter if we're talking about columns only or observation doesn't work at all. Here, I'm not gonna use any particular column. So could it work? Yes, in this case it works, right? As you can see here, we're going to show you again. iloc, it's including the index 0, 1, 2, whoever the third one no. So this is when you are not including any extra comma here, we're talking about observations only. So you can see it 0, 1, and 2. And if you want to separate or select them by columns 2, you just add a comma and the number of the index related to the column you're talking about. Now, it's important to notice that this is for consecutive columns or consecutive rows when we use the 0 to 0.3. However, for non-consecutive rows, we can speak about list 2. It's the same about with columns, remember? We were using the comma here, separating, and that's all. So the same thing. We don't have any particular order, but we mark it, the one we mark, so that's like that. And here, the question is here, is I gave you the example, is 2, 3, and 4 indexes for observations, and 1 and 2 indexes for columns. You can see it. The same idea here, leaving the space or not, because the index in this case doesn't have any label. That's why I can use digits too. Okay, the same than iloc. When we have index with different names, that where we have to be careful and type loc with its appropriate label for each index and column. Okay, that's all. We already saw this part. And now, not only selecting or filtering, or whatever you want to call it, but conditions. For example, we have different information in our data set, and we want to select only people with marks above 80. And let's see, we are going to compare for each observation or value in each column, those with a value greater than 80. And we have a Boolean vector or Boolean list in this case, true, false, true, 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 and that's our condition. And then if we want to filter our rows that meet that condition, we just use brackets. And inside, anything that is true or false will rebuild and will be print only the ones who meet the condition true. And all the thing here is that we're filtering all the columns. So if you want to filter by columns too, or selecting columns, remember that we can use loc or iloc, how do you prefer? And step by step could be, I create my variable, my Boolean variable, filter, and I have my column information. Then I call my data frame with a filter in the brackets. That's the step. Column or columns. You can see here, if I'm going to use this information is because I'm going to use, okay, filter me all information, and you're going to print me all those observations that meet my criteria in the column name. We saw that we can use dot name or the name of the variable, or also we saw that we can select different columns using iloc as I was telling you before. Here, my index, the indices for each column, and here we are. I haven't printed any information about marks, just using other columns related to in my data frame. But that doesn't mean that I have to use marks in that column I'm selecting. No, I use marks for filtering the information, and then I use the columns I want or I really need. You can see this is the information we previously saw, selecting not consecutive columns, age and height in this case. And by the names too, we can filter all the information using, as you can see, my condition, they meet my condition, and then use loc or iloc as you prefer. Now, I can even use my index for filtering information. You can see I'm going to say, okay, give me the information coming from the index 0. That means that my observation with index 0. You can see I have a Boolean array telling me that, okay, that this is the one, and then I called my data frame. It works. It gives me all my observation. It's the same, but in this case we use index. This is the idea mainly. And now, if I want to retrieve the index or indices from different observation that meet some criteria of my query, so okay, you're gonna give me those the indices of those students with a height greater than 175 centimeters. And you can see here, okay, this is the indices I got for you. And I can save it in some variable, and I'm gonna retrieve all the information using iloc. You can see these are the students who are above 175 centimeters. This could be with using iloc here, or I can even use the column's name and then iloc. However it works for you. I have not only one condition, but multiple. As you can see here, I have give me the index of these students and give me all the information. It works for you. It could be even shorter or longer. It depends the query. You can see, I will try to replace one value using this. I'm asking, which students have or are 20 years old? You can see here, it's gonna give me some information. Okay, the student in the index 0, I save it in X, and it's gonna print, as you can see, and then it's gonna retrieve this information. Okay, yes, it's 20, perfect. Or this way too. And now I'm going to replace it. This is one way, but in the future episodes, we're going to discuss how to replace information in a data frame by columns or by observation or cells. You can see I'm telling, okay, that information from this vector 0 with index 0 in the column 1, because it's index, remember the index, here I'm saying age, you will replace that value and you're gonna save it to 21. And as you can see, if it works or not, now it's 21. That's one way. That's why we filter information. Okay, that's how we use information. Now, what about where? And why are we going to use where? That will be so important. Where is going to be used mostly when we have null values. So you can see here, I'm going to print my data frame, student, and we will comparing student df. You can see here, I'm going to ask the same condition in the past. Student df height greater than 175. What am I saying here? Okay, you will find all those persons who meet this criteria. And the other ones, you will fill them with 0. And you will see. Okay, all those persons with height greater than 175 are print all the observation. However, the other ones are equal to 0. And the idea here is to replace null values. For example, we can ask if one cell is null, and if not, we're going to keep it. Or the opposite. If it's not null value, keep it, and others equals 0. That's one way to input null values. That's the idea. Also is, if you want to eliminate, you want to remove some information, and remember that you have in place for saving directly in our data frame without saving or typing here student df equal here. And for example, the filter. What was the filter, right? You have this filter. We were talking about the marks, remember? And now we will say, you can see the marks have to be greater than 80. If not, say you are going to fill it with 0. And here in this case, if I run this part, it's going to replace the values completely in my data frame. But I haven't done that part, so the data frame is identical as the beginning. Now the function filter. Maybe somebody could say, okay, the filter is going to be for filtering information directly. Well, I'm going to show you this example. As you can see here, I have the data frame dot filter. Items that I want to filter directly is items is name and age. Not using iloc, log, not necessary, as you can see, or calling student df by the names of each column. I can use even filter. So you can see items names and com. Filter like n. That's the difference. That maybe I have multiple columns that start or I have an n in their names. I use like n. You can see his name in this case. And I can use axis columns because I'm looking for the columns information. You could even use axis equal 1, like in this case, that means referring to columns, is the same thing. And rows. I can, okay, rows. However, as you can see here, there is a problem because in the data frame, you can say, okay, here I'm gonna print this information. What other one? Here you have some names here with Nat. For example, Nat's name starts with N. Why? It doesn't print it, right? However, the thing here is, as you can see, I can say rows or axis equals 0. That's referring to observations. What is the problem here? Because max, I'm gonna type maybe it was Nat, but max nothing, empty. Okay, but now what if I used a number? You see, the index with 5 is max. Okay, what about if I use this information? And I want to say yes. As you can see, this stuff works only with index name. That was the problem here. Okay, and then we'll say, okay, create or filter my or select my information only with those columns with the letter N on it. And you can see, I got this, one single column. That's how we filter or select information in DataFrames with Pandas. There are multiple ways, but this is the easiest ones. And I hope you enjoy it and it's useful for you too. And any comments, suggestions, they are very welcome. And thank you very much for your attention. And see you in the next episode about DataFrames with Pandas in Python. See you.